Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending today's Build Meetup. We're excited to have you here. We'll give people a couple minutes to trickle in, but wanted to introduce myself and today's topic. My name is Mark Reyes. I'm part of the marketing team here at Build, and I'll be your host for today's event, where we will be talking about the truth behind subcontractor supplier relationships. We're going to be peeling back the layers of these relationships, talk about what are the things, the challenges that cause them to strain or even fracture, and then also offer some solutions for how you can build stronger, better, more sustainable relationships between subs and suppliers. We'll start out by talking about some of the common challenges that subs and suppliers face and how it can impact their working relationship. From there, as I mentioned, we'll talk about some solutions that they can implement to foster more communication and collaboration to really improve those relationships and turn them into true partnerships. And finally, we'll detail some of the benefits to having a really strong sub-supplier relationship. We'll also do a Q&A section at the end. So if any questions come to mind, click on the little Q&A tab. Feel free to pop those in there, and we'll get to those towards the end of the event. I'm thrilled to be joined by some of our great friends. On the subcontractor side, we have Jared Craddock and Michael Herndon, the founders of Structure One, an Austin-based steel subcontractor. We are also joined by Josh Tenalia. He is the finance program manager at BayWa, which is a global solar supplier. So Jared and Michael, let's start with you. If you can just introduce yourselves and your business a little bit, and then we'll have Josh do the same.
Yeah, I'm Jared Craddock, and I've been out towards the Austin area, actually Dripping Springs. We primarily do work in the Texas and the Tennessee market. We are a steel building, really a custom steel building, pre-engineered metal building supplier. And at times we do step into the subcontractor world where we will handle the erection of the steel building as well.
Excellent. And Josh, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and BayWa?
Yeah, of course. I'm Josh Tinali with BayWa, finance program manager. Like Mark said, we're a global supplier of renewable energy products here in the United States. That's mainly focused on solar panels, inverters, batteries, racking, and some other products that we're working to build up to. Pure play solar, I guess, is the term that we like to use here. And my job here, my role at BayWa, is to strategically partner us with lenders or other third parties to help us offer new cool tools to our customer base.
Perfect. Well, before we get into the meat of the presentation, we have a quick poll that we'd love for each of you to fill out. And we are interested in knowing what is the biggest challenge in managing the sub-supplier relationships. Now, I'm sure that many of you have experienced all of these at one time or another, or maybe at the same time. But if you can just click on the poll selection for whichever is the one that maybe hampers your ability to work with suppliers effectively, and we'll take a look at the results in just a few minutes. But I want to start by talking about some of the challenges when looking at scaling and growing a business. And let's start with the subcontractor side. So, Jared, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that you experience when trying to take on bigger, more ambitious projects that may have greater material requirements?
I would say the largest challenge that we have faced would be related to cash flow, especially when it comes to the larger projects. That just being able to, as a subcontractor, where we deal with a lot of general contractors and a lot of private projects, and a lot of these projects are driven by AIA type contract documents and pay applications. And depending upon when we deliver materials and when we are able to bill for those materials, it may be 45, 50, sometimes 60 days before we're able to receive the revenue for those materials. even though our supplier is going to want, they will get paid within 30 to 40 days. So being able to manage the accounts receivables, making sure that we're going to bring in enough cash flow to fund those projects moving forward is by far our largest challenge.
Yeah, and that's no surprise to us. We saw in the last slide, according to Build's most recent market report, 46% of subs said that cash flow constraints held them back from achieving their growth goals in 2023. It's certainly a challenge we're familiar with. And just looking at the poll results, by far the biggest challenge, hurting that sub-supplier relationships is unpredictable payment cycles. So slow pay. We know this is a huge issue. And again, it's not surprising. It's something we hear from our customers all the time. And we also know that it's not just something that is going to affect subcontractors, but it's also going to affect suppliers as well. So switching gears and trying to get from the supplier perspective, Josh, how do cash flow constraints and the negative effects of slow pay impact your business and your ability to take on and serve your clients?
Important question, right? Yeah, and I'm not surprised that a lot of people mention cash flow as their biggest hurdle right now, given the state of things. Cash flow, you could definitely do things with it to help you try and pay off previous projects, apply towards marketing or any other, I guess, investment in the future. And not having the right cash flow based on when you get paid could be really painful, right? So that trickles down to us too, and the old guard of how the relationship between supplier and subcontractors always worked is y'all, the subcontractors, get paid, like Jared said, typically 45, 60 days after you've done the work. And you're having to pay your supplier who's putting you on net 30 terms. So that puts us behind the eight ball too, right? And we all kind of share a little bit of that pain. So what happens to us then though is we're turning around and having to make payments to our manufacturers as well, because we're kind of playing that middleman, so to speak, to get equipment from the docks, from various areas all throughout the world, really, to job sites throughout the United States. So having that slow us down a little bit impacts our ability to forecast accurately. And then also, to the second part of your question, makes it really hard for us to capture more clients. Because now if we're trying to couple previous issues with maybe slow payments before from our subcontractors, and now we're having to add new customers to that mix, it makes it really hard to try and serve your new customers the same way you would with your old. So it just compounds an already existing problem.
Yeah, well, clearly, this is one of the biggest issues in construction. And unfortunately, there's no easy solution for slow pay, at least not right now. But, as we'll see a little bit later on, there are ways for subs and suppliers to better work together to kind of mitigate some of these issues. In addition to, simply managing cash flow and some of the hurdles there, Jared, I'm interested to know, what effect does inconsistencies in the supply chain have on your ability to deliver work for your clients?
It that was showcased rather abruptly in 2021. 2020 wasn't all that bad during the main portion of COVID, but in 2021 and even 2022, when there were shortages in materials, it was tough, and um, it would always, the client, a developer or an end user, that they've got a project that they're needing to get built, and they don't necessarily understand, um, you know, exactly how bad the material shortage issues may be within the industry. It has recovered now in 2024, but it was a huge issue, and but take that back to the cash flow problem, right? If you're a supplier and you have a limited amount of materials, and you're going to put your clients and your customers on a quota, let's say, you're gonna pick the clients that are paying you on time, to give them a larger portion of that quota. Hopefully there won't be another 2022 to 2021 material shortages, but my guess is there will be. So we're always anticipating the next, material shortage issues and the next price escalation stage within the industry, because it's cyclical. It always happens, and I think it starts with that supplier subcontractor relationship, keeping that strong, that when the turbulent time does arise, then you already have a great relationship that you can lean on for both parties, the supplier and the subcontractor.
Yeah, and that's something that's so difficult is the unpredictability of when a sub is going to get paid, unpredictability in the supply chain and in pricing, and certainly one of the biggest challenges that subs are facing when they're trying to grow. So we've outlined a little bit about challenges from the subcontractor perspective. Josh, from the supplier perspective, what are the challenges that subs are experiencing every day when trying to grow? How does that complicate your relationship when trying to provide those materials?
Oh, it makes it so complicated. So Jared brought up a really good point about, who you're going to service if, things get tight, right? And it makes me think of those same exact times. It must be we both have the same PTSD, Jared, regarding that. And just so everybody on the call knows too, this isn't the first time that the four of us have talked about this. And I got to say, every time we've discussed something to this nature, I'm really impressed with how well Structure One handles their supplier relationship. So whoever your supplier is, guys, I really wish I was in the steel business, but it complicates it because then we're also forcing ourselves to kind of prioritize customers, right? And no one wants to be the low person on the totem pole in that regard. So when we're having a shortage of equipment to us, we're having to look at our accounts and go, who do we have the best relationship with? And that's what this whole conversation is about, is developing better relationships between subs and suppliers, right? So we're looking at our pipeline saying, okay, well, contractor ABC, they pay on time, they do pretty good forecasting, that's an easy yes. We might slide on down the scale and look at some other customers who are like slow paying or don't give us accurate forecasts. That unpredictability makes it really hard for us. So the more unpredictability there is in the general market, the more predictable we have to be with our own customer, or the more we have to look at predictability within our customer base and their ability to communicate with us. So that just, it rolls downhill, so to speak. So yeah, it could get really complicated. But at the end of the day, we're going to continue to try our best to supply and focus on our best customers who we have those solid relationships with.
Right. And that's definitely the goal. But, obviously there are going to be times when these relationships get strained due to a lot of the challenges that subs are facing and a lot of things that are out of their control. So, how does that negatively impact your business and your ability to serve them?
Greatly. I mean, not only does it impact our ability to do the work itself, to ship equipment on time, but then our subs aren't getting equipment when they want to install jobs, right? So for us, we lose potential good paying customers, or ones that were even those, I want to say, hit or miss ones on time or giving us good forecasts. Those relationships might fall altogether and they might, go to a competitor. We're not the only distributor in the business, right? So we might lose some of that wallet share we had with that customer. So yeah, there's real possibility that not only do we not win their business today, but we lose their business tomorrow. And that could,
Mhm.
just keep carrying, bad weight ultimately.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And one of the things that's always interested me that I've heard you talk about is transactional relationships versus a partnership. So, can you describe the difference between transactional relationships versus a true partnership and explain why the true partnership is the best route to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, transactional relationship, it would be, the case where we're working with an installer who just orders the same thing every day, just says, here's what we want for this job, XYZ, we ship it to them. And there's really no thought between either of us about, what's happening the next week, the next month, the next year, market trends. It's very much so a surface level relationship, right? It's kind of like the person you're going for a walk every day and you just kind of give them the smile and nod, right? There's not much interaction. So, when you want to really deepen that relationship with your supplier to get some of those benefits I mentioned earlier of steady supply, good forecasting, etc., you really want to think of your supplier as a strategic partner, not just someone who sells you the equipment, warehouses your equipment, procures your equipment, does all the logistics. There's so much more to a supplier, right? We're talking to other contractors throughout, not only your market but other markets, and can see trends. We can help understand equipment a little bit better. We can see what's coming around the docket because of law changes when it comes to tariffs. The list goes on. So really leverage your distributor as someone who also has access to a lot more information that can help you be successful in your business, because we're seeing it in other places. Don't just don't just make transactions. Make friends with your suppliers, because those relationships will pay off, to Jared's point, when times do go south and you really are in a pinch and there's tight supply of things. Who are you going to go to? Your strategic partner.
For sure, 100%. So, look, we know that a true partnership is the desired outcome for subs and suppliers, but how do we get there? Let's dive into some concrete things about what you can do to really improve that relationship, turn it into a partnership. So, Jared, I'll turn to you once again, and would love to hear about what are some of the things that you and Structure One has done to improve relationships with suppliers.
I would say we've learned a lot. But Michael and I both, jumped to our business without previously owning a business, and you learn by fire. I'm sure there's plenty of people on here on the call today that are in the same boat. That most of this stuff you don't learn in engineering school, that I remember anyway. So I would say, one of the main things is communication with your supplier. When you are going to be late, don't wait till they reach out to you 10 days after you're late. Be proactive about the communication, so that there's an open line of communication, and always be honest, right? If you say, yeah, I'll pay you by this Friday, try to make that happen, or at the very least, you're on the phone Thursday that, hey, something else has happened, and I'm going to have to push this till at some point next week. Just keep open communication. And from what I've learned is they respect that, and they love the communication. It's when the phones go silent that everyone begins to get concerned and get worried. And I would also say that, within any relationship, and we try to do this with our clients as well, you don't go into a relationship and you're both perfect, and it's a symbiotic relationship in the very beginning. You have to learn what they need, and what your supplier needs, and what they want. And they need to learn what you need and what you want. And there's going to have to be some give and take there for it to become a true relationship and a true partnership, as opposed to just that transactional type relationship.
Sure, it's a hard thing to do, and it's all about trust, and trust is really hard to earn. So I think you're totally right that, effective communication can go a long way, even if it's something where you're like, they aren't going to want to hear this. They'd rather hear it from you early than have to find out late. And that's some of the things that can really strain a relationship between a sub and a supplier. So, as Josh mentioned, you guys have done a great job of forging really strong bonds with your suppliers. What sort of positive impact has that had on your business, and how has it kind of helped you to support your growth goals?
Oh, I can't hear Jared.
Jared, I don't think we can hear you.
Oh, there we go. I accidentally muted. Yeah, I muted myself. I would say that it's always a work in progress, right? We're most definitely not perfect. It's what is it? A progress, not perfection. And so we're constantly trying to build and make those relationships better. Can we be better? Without a doubt. But we are working towards that. But I would say, when let's say we're looking at a large project that 2 years ago we would not have attempted to chase. Now we've got those relationships that we can pick up the phone to our suppliers and tell them, hey, we're going after this large project. Number one, can you assist us? We're gonna drop some of our margins. We're going to get very creative in our pricing strategy, and can you participate in that effort? And knowing that if we do get the project, that we're going to lean on our the amount of credit that we've been given with you to either up it or to work with them on that particular project to ensure that there won't be any issues when it comes to credit. So again, it comes down to communicate. It all falls right back to the communication aspect to the relationship that it affords you the ability to be more bullish on the projects that you do chase that you might not have if you didn't have a strong relationship.
Absolutely. It's got to be a collaborative effort. And, that kind of leads me to our next slide, which is, this is not a one-way street. You guys have done great things, and I think they're repeatable for a lot of subcontractors, but there's got to be give and take too. So, let's go to Josh and, what are some of the things that you do to work with subs who are trying to go, and how do you help to support their growth goals?
Important question. And I'm going to piggyback a little bit off Jared in the communication piece, right? Because we love to hear that. We love getting a little advance notice of, big projects you have in your pipeline or, potential slow pays. Silence is probably the scariest thing my credit team will ever face. Ever. So yeah, please communicate. Word of advice for everybody, and that plays very well into how we help subcontractors grow. Right, is having open communication, more transparency around your business, where your business stands, what markets you're in, what products you offer. Forecasting obviously is a big piece of that too, right? So the more information we can gather from you, the subcontractor, the better we can supply you. Funny enough, right? So a lot of that depends on how we approach a customer and talk to them, ask them the right questions, want to know what products they're using, what softwares they have. So I mean, in this day and age, there's a lot of different software that we all use for different things, right? And if we can tap into that somehow and get better idea on forecasting and understanding where your business is and your needs are, we're going to be able to support you a lot better, especially through a growth period.
Absolutely. What sort of process do you use to determine what their goals, needs are, and how do you set expectations for how you'll be able to meet those?
Yeah, of course. I don't want to give too much of our secret sauce away, but I'll give just enough away. So our approach is consultative, right? It's very much so away from that transactional conversation where we're, just passing by each other on the street. We want to take the moment when we have someone on the phone to take another moment or another 2 moments, 3 moments to dig deeper about, the equipment you're offering, the people you're selling to, whether that be, and I know there could be commercial contractors as well as residential contractors here as well. We want to understand that mix as a supplier because those in the solar space are two very different models of business, right? So attacking residential and commercial are both very different ways of procuring equipment, selling to the end user, financing. So just this stream of consciousness I'm having when it comes to the differences in just those two tells you about the different question trees our sales team is going to go down to really enmesh and understand how our customer base works. Because ultimately, it all rolls up to one credit line under one customer, whether that be residential or commercial. And that could be the challenge we all face when it comes to the cash flow. So the more we can dig deep into the roots and understand your business, the better we're going to be at serving you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what you mentioned about a true partnership versus just a transactional relationship, which for a lot of people might not even be worth looking at. Just someone who wants to get in, get out, get the materials, and you never talk to them again. So I think you make some really good points. I want to get Michael involved now. Hi, Michael. I'd love to hear, let's say you're talking with another subcontractor. They're struggling to hit their growth goals. They're having issues working and kind of building good relationships with suppliers. What sort of advice would you to give to them?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is it is about having a true partnership, as both Josh and Jared have already touched on, and developing those relationships and understanding their business to the point where you can help them as well as they can help you, right? So, if we're talking about cash flow, credit terms, payment terms, all of those things come into play massively for us in the construction industry. And understanding what those are driven by, for that company, whether they can look at a project differently. As Jared mentioned, if we have a large project coming up and we could pay you early for the material, is there an additional discount that you can offer because you're going to get paid up front on that job? Just coming up with creative solutions for specific jobs not being afraid to dig deeper and ask those important questions to kind of understand their business model as well as your own, which makes you a better customer, makes you a better client, makes you a better buyer as well. So there's a lot of different ways that can help, and it goes both ways too, right? Not only subcontractor buying from a supplier, but also subcontractor working uphill to a general contractor. Understanding them, being able to communicate with them and understand when they're going to get paid by the owner. And that way you can communicate that back downhill. So just having a good understanding and not being afraid to talk about money and talk about pay terms openly, which I think, is something that some people do have to kind of get over. And when they're new in the business and growing, because, it's sometimes an uncomfortable conversation to say, this is my credit limit with this supplier, and this is going to go above that. Is there a way that we can all collectively work to figure out a way for us to do this job together? So I think being able to have the courage to have those conversations is critical as you're in growth mode, because look, people understand growth mode requires cash. And I think most of us are in growth mode. I think we certainly are as a younger business. But I think a lot of the people on this call probably are, because you're seeking out information about how to grow your business, right? So I think this is one of the key kind of takeaways from this is communication, and then just understanding where the money is going to come from on every given project, and have a plan for it going into it.
Yeah, you mentioned, creative solutions to some of these common challenges. What are some of the ways at Structure One that you try to foster more collaboration with suppliers?
Yeah, I think we do try to have that open communication, and we've even tried, setting up different things, asking them, how can we better integrate into your processes, right? Like, so, can we detail things in a certain way that works better for your team fabricating? Can we actually put information together on a shipper, for example, and a way that makes it easier for your team? So we're using less of your man hours for our jobs, then we're probably a little bit better customer for you. And I think that goes also to, payment and credit terms and things like that. And I think, we've had examples in the past where using, we've had suppliers that need certain payment terms, and it's not dictated by they just want their money. It's dictated by they have to pay for their material in a certain time, and their suppliers have certain restrictions as well. So, but they're great suppliers, and we need to work with them to be able to supply our jobs on time, on budget, on schedule, all that good stuff that everybody needs. And for us to work with them, we've had to get creative and use different alternative financing solutions like Build that we've been able to put on the table and get their needs taken care of, while also being able to access them as a supplier, which has been critical for us as far as being able to meet certain schedules, especially because they are certainly capable of providing a better schedule than most of our other suppliers in that specific arena. So that's one example, I think, of kind of what's been a success for us in building those relationships and being able to leverage those kind of ideas into stronger partnerships.
Sure. And again, it's the give and take, right? It takes both parties being willing and able to really kind of foster great communication and collaboration. But the benefits are seemingly endless in terms of being able to grow and get your business where you want it to be. So, we've talked about the challenges that both of these groups have experienced, and a lot of you probably are experiencing right now. We've talked about some solutions of how you can build better, more sustainable relationships. Now let's look towards the future. And I want to tap you in again, Josh. We've talked before about the evolving relationship between subs and suppliers. So, as subs like Structure One are looking to grow, they're trying to be more ambitious with the projects they take on. Those are, almost undoubtedly going to have greater material demands. How do you see that relationship continuing to evolve?
Oh man, that's such an important question. And I also don't want to live too much in a fantasy land and make these suggestions without acknowledging the fact that these are very hard suggestions, right? We're asking you to change the way you look at your supplier, to communicate more, to have, to Michael's point, uncomfortable conversations. But you need that, right? If it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and so would your competitors. So lean into these really hard things. Another really challenging thing that I think is going to be helpful moving forward, especially as you're trying to take on larger projects, is using what tools you have available to help your supplier out. So there's really, I guess, two ways I want to answer this, Mark. One is the fact that technology, like I said before, is getting more pervasive in how we do business. And as a supplier, that's great. That means more data, right? And that data can help us see more down our subcontractors' pipelines to see, what products they could be bidding that haven't even sold yet, right? So in the solar world, there's lots of different solar softwares that allow us to potentially tap into that deep of a pipeline and further on, which helps us forecast, right? So I think, future wise, forecast is a big one, and understanding if there's bigger projects coming up down the pipe that are going to build up the credit terms that we have for a customer, right? Because as those things evolve and get bigger, we're going to have even bigger challenges because we're only limited by our own resources, which is that of a credit line or our own manufacturers' payment terms for us, right? So I think that's kind of what I want to really hone in with everybody here is if you want to evolve, take the next step. It is that communication piece and being able to have that conversation and be able to provide better data, some way, shape, or form to your suppliers, which sounds easy, right? Every supplier, if you've ever been in distribution, you would know that forecasting is sometimes a really cleanly educated guess. I don't want to call it guessing too much, but that is the challenge in the nature of our business.
Yeah, you mentioned, technological changes. What sort of trends are you seeing, whether they be technological, economic, that you think subs should be aware of?
Great question. I mean, again, that same technology could lead to bigger bridges between these gaps, right? So we have Build, for instance, is going to help bridge the gap between when a contractor gets paid and when they pay us. There's other fintechs available that offer very similar things that we work with. So it's called Split Pay. It's the ability for you as a subcontractor to help your homeowners or building owners pay for the solar project on their own, and then through the disbursements of either those loans or third party finance projects to pay for equipment. And that allows us as a distributor to not touch your credit terms. You're essentially just saying, hey, we have earmarked funds coming from a loan directly to you. We're going to get paid when you get paid. That makes everybody's life easier. So those kinds of tools I think are becoming more commonplace in distributors' mindsets, and more subcontractors are aware of that tool in their tool belt. So, you're, like I mentioned, the fact that you have the split pay, you also have all your other outstanding lines of credit that you could use. So, really diversifying what you have tool wise is going to help you in 2024, 2025, and beyond. Look out for those tools because I think there's more coming, especially as capital might and hopefully starts to get cheaper again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these are things that subcontractors are getting more and more on board with, looking for alternative technologies to make them more efficient, looking at alternative forms of financing to kind of really bolster their working capital options. So I think those are really great points and trends that I'm sure we'll see will continue into the future. So now we want to hear from you. We'd love to hear if you have any questions for either Michael and Jared or Josh. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now. Feel free to pop those in if you have anything you'd like to ask, and I can relay those questions to our presenters. In the meantime, I did have a couple of additional questions. One of the first would be for you, Jared. We worked on a case study together that's on the Build website, and you talked a little bit about how building these better relationships has helped you improve how you deliver work for your customers. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would. If uh, when it comes, most of it comes down to having a great relationship with your supplier, and then when we have a client and they have their needs, it's typically, when can we have material on the ground, and most of our projects might take 2 to 3 months potentially by the time that we're given a letter of intent to the time that material can hit the ground. But there's certain clients and certain projects where the materials need to arrive sooner, and we strive to meet the needs of our client, and all of those dates are typically discussed prior to any contract. But being able to then know that you have a great relationship when you're negotiating a project, that you have a great relationship with your suppliers, and that you would be able to lean on them to meet a certain deadline, it is just huge in our market. It is because we're dealing with clients that at some point there's an end user involved, and they've got a loan, and they've got interim financing involved with that loan, and they're not making money until their project gets completed. So speed is a big portion of the game within our industry. So it's just very, very important to be able to lean on them. And once, I'll give you an example that we have a couple of suppliers that we have worked with over the last several years, and we have worked out a system with them because our relationship has gotten so strong that we're able to basically pre-order, or we're able to get one of our all of our projects slotted into their system prior to them ever even seeing what they're going to be making. Prior to us sending them the material purchase orders, we're able to get slotted into their schedule, which is a huge help for us because that might save us 2 to 3 weeks in some cases. And again, that's part of that building that relationship, and that we were able to have those discussions with them, and they felt comfortable working with us on that type of level.
Yeah, and when speed is the biggest key, and we talked before about how you guys deal with long lead times, that extra 2 and 3 weeks can make a huge difference. Michael, I had another question for you, and this is about, we've spent this whole session talking about how subs and suppliers work together, building those better relationships. Is having those healthy, strong relationships, has that affected how you work and communicate with your GCs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, us being able to give good information to our customers, who are ultimately general contractors, is a critical part of our business, because we want to be a repeat sales, kind of business. Like we want to work with a few customers, a few clients, and super serve them to the point where they don't ever want to buy from anybody else, right? That is our model. And so our ability to super serve them requires us to be able to give them accurate information, whether it's pricing, whether it's the like lead times and schedules, especially, in being able to lean on and trust those suppliers that they can come through for us when they tell us they can. That's critical to us being confident in being able to provide accurate schedules and information. So that's such an important thing for us, and just not ever having to enter a job with the concern that, oh no, what if we hit a credit limit and we're just not able to buy this material on time. And it just gives us a relief in knowing that we're not going to drop that ball for our customer, and having that backing to be able to say that with our full confidence when we give them that information, and then back it up, which ultimately is the name of the game. So.
Yep, absolutely. We just had a question coming through the chat. The question was, what was a learning opportunity for you in managing your relationship? So I think this applies to, kind of both the subcontractor and supplier side. So do any of you have any anecdotes about learning opportunities when working through and trying to improve these relationships?
I can definitely go. I guess in my world, where I live between kind of sales and credit, I want to help grow our customer base while also managing risk. A learning opportunity, I think, for me that comes to mind is just fully understanding a new contractor, specifically one that's going to be using one of these tools, because they might have different expectations based on previous experience versus how we do business, right? So I think that without getting into specifics, I don't want to fall on a sword or anything here, but really I made the assumption that this customer of ours was going to be doing the business like the rest of ours because they had done similar projects before, but with a different supplier. Come to find out, some of our processes were off just by a little bit to make it look like they were able to basically borrow more from us equipment wise than they really could. So, lesson learned is communication. I feel like we've really just drilled into that today, but it's so important because I didn't ask the right questions and I assumed, which obviously you know what that did to me. So just really make sure you're lining up the expectations for yourself and your supplier, especially for you subs out there, right? To Michael's point, being able to understand, where you stand with your supplier and your ability to get equipment when you need it. You're going to have to also pass that off on to your own customers. So in that essence, you're kind of playing the middleman, right? So communication, communication, communication.
That's a really great story, and sometimes you got to learn the hard way. But as long as you can take that learning opportunity and make it something where you're strengthening your other relationships with subcontractors, I think that's a great takeaway. Jared and Michael, anything from your end? Any learning opportunities that come to mind?
I would say that in the age of Zoom, that I love Zoom and Teams. I think it's great, but um, I think going and meeting your suppliers face to face is so critically important, just to build upon that relationship that you're trying to become a healthy relationship. And I think you just can't beat a face-to-face meeting with your suppliers. We had one supplier, a critical supplier of ours, and I think they're up in the North Texas area. And I didn't want to leave to go up and visit them, but it made sense because we needed to increase our credit limit. We were growing, and they were somewhat hesitant to do so. And by going and visiting with them in person, guess what? Our credit limit got increased not long after that meeting, just because it gives them a larger comfort level of who you are and what you're trying to do with your business, that I just don't think you can convey over Zoom.
Totally. And I think it also shows how invested you are. You're not just calling them up when you need something, you're really invested in building a partnership that is mutually beneficial. So that's another great learning as well. I don't think we have any more questions in the Q&A. Feel free to pop any as they come up as we kind of wrap up this event today, and we'll be sure to get those answered for you. So, kind of our last question here, and would love to hear from Michael and then Josh. What is one big takeaway from this is kind of similar to learning opportunities, but if any of our attendees are going to take one thing away from this presentation, what do you think it would be? Let's hear from Michael first.
Yeah, and I think at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think communication, over communicate, seek to understand your supplier or your subcontractor's business model, as well as not just what they do, but why they do it that way. And I think going that level deeper, to give one quick anecdote on that. I recently had, and this one, isn't me. This was our customer actually doing the work to over communicate. But he called me up, and we don't typically rent roof seamers, right? So we typically leave that to the erector on the job. But in this case, he said, "Hey, I really want you to do it." And I asked, "Well, we don't typically, and this is the reason why, but why do you really want us to do it on this one?" And it turns out it's just a company policy, I guess, for them, that they cannot put anything like that on a credit card. And this specific supplier had a rule that they had to put down a $20,000 deposit to basically cover the cost of the equipment if they were not putting it on a credit card. So we were able to put it on a credit card, and obviously that saves them that $20,000 outlay for, even if it's just a few weeks, that's still $20,000 out of their account that they otherwise, don't have to worry about now. And it's a huge value to them, and it's really no skin off our back. I mean, that's not a huge issue for us. So just them expressing that, piece of information that I didn't know. And I just thought, why do you want me to rent the steamer? It's just as easy for you to do it. Well, it's not, and so now we know that about them, and we're able to work together moving forward in a little bit easier way. And I just think that's an example of what we've been talking about today, understanding the why behind why they do what they do, as well as, giving them the why of why do you do what you do. So I think when we understand that relationship better, it's just better for the entire team and helps you work more efficiently.
Yeah, that is a really great example. Thank you for sharing that story. Josh, what would you like people to take away from this session?
Yeah, I don't want to. I'm like Michael. I don't want to sound like a broken record, and I had a lot of time to think about this too while he was talking. So, I think the goal really is for everybody to stay curious, whether that be about new products out there, new fintech products, new ways of managing your credit, new suppliers, right? So if your supplier isn't asking you questions about yourself, ask them questions. Ultimately, and this is maybe kind of tooting our own horn a little bit, we want to be able to ask questions to our contractors, our customers, questions that they haven't asked themselves, right? So get them to a level of understanding about themselves they didn't have before. I mean, that's the ultimate win for any person in any sales position, to help your customer realize something about themselves they didn't before, and your solution might or might not be the right fit. But that understanding is where it starts from. So if your supplier isn't asking you those questions, go ahead and ask your supplier, questions, tough ones. Ask them about the market. Why do you keep selling me this product? Why do I keep getting this suggestion from you? Why do you guys, partner up with this company? Why? And if they're not into it, maybe you're not talking to the right supplier, right? So again, maybe tooting our own horn. But yeah, stay curious, because ultimately, at the end of the day, business is evolving faster than it's ever evolved, and it will continue to do so as technology continues to flourish, and we continue to build cool things. So yeah, stay curious, y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Josh. As we get ready to wrap up this presentation, I've got one more poll that I've just published, and that is, do you want to get in touch with us? We'd love to discuss this meetup further, answer any questions you may have. It's a big topic, and we are only able to talk about a small part of it. But if you're interested in getting in touch with Build, with Structure One, with BayWa, or all of us, go ahead and fill out that poll right now. So, as we're wrapping up, just a little bit about Build. We are the largest construction-specific finance partner in the U.S. We offer several financial products built specifically to help subcontractors that function as product-based lines of credit. We're meant to be used as one of the options in a sub's working capital stack. So we're an additional financial resource meant to help subcontractors get a better handle on their cash flow and plan for sustainable growth. So if you're interested in learning more, go ahead and fill out that poll, and we'd be happy to get you connected with one of our representatives.
A little bit about us. Structure One, we are a metal building, as Jared said, metal building, steel building, subcontractor and supplier. We kind of focus our business on design build projects, specifically kind of high complexity work that, if you've ever dealt with a metal building manufacturer, the traditional one, they don't really like complexity. Anything that adds engineering and detailing time to the project, they're kind of allergic to it. We kind of fill in that gap because we are design focused, very much custom detail focused, and we try to provide those solutions to our customers, and obviously quality products on time and in budget and all that good stuff too. But really the high complexity steel building work is what we focus on, and we think our approach to that specific trade is a little bit better than the traditional one that's out there on the market. So If you're interested, yeah, absolutely fill out the poll and get in contact with us, and we'd love to talk to you, as well as if you just have any questions about what we've talked about today and want to get our thoughts, offline. That's fine too.
All right, my turn. So, Baywa, yeah, are you a contractor who's trying to work in multiple markets? Are you trying to get a little bit of transparency? Are you trying to understand more about trends? I mean, that's something Baywa can deliver, and it's something we're used to delivering, right? This consultative approach I mentioned earlier is just a first small stepping stone towards working with Baywa. You'll have a full suite of access to our inventory with an online portal, which allows you to see where the equipment you're trying to order is located. And it gives you a better idea on timing. It's tied directly to your credit, so you can make an order online. Not quite the Amazon maybe of orders, but I'd say pretty close. So really, just want to help serve you better, grow your business, scale it, find new things, and obviously stay curious. All the while succeeding in business and capturing healthy margins for yourself.
Awesome. Well, Jared, Michael, and Josh, thanks so much for such a fantastic presentation. Thanks to all of you for joining us for this meetup today. You can look out for an email coming later this afternoon with a link to the on-demand version of the meetup, as well as a couple other resources we think you might find relevant. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.